A year ago, we were digital ditch diggers. The metaphor I'm using is, think of the Ford assembly plant. You had a guy that showed up to work every day and he's like, I'm the tire man. I put the tires on the car. That's what I do. A lot of manual labor, human labor was going in, and it was probably quite unsafe. And what we're doing now is it's more like the Toyota, where the plant has certain stages. We have a defined process. We might even have some robotic arms. AI has given us some industrialization or some robotic processing sitting over the top, working autonomously based off proper instructions. We're even getting where this robot knows exactly how to do this set of work, and we're fine delegating that to that agent. So that is where my excitement comes from, is because now we get to actually be engineers, and nobody's losing fingers in the manufacturing process because they missed a semicolon or didn't put a single quote in the right place. My name is Ben Johnson, and I am the CEO of Particle 41. We're a fractional CTO service, and we also have been doing software delivery and technical execution for about 20 years, me and my business partner. And we do software development, data engineering, and DevOps. Think of us as your SEAL Team 6 for technical execution. We've launched 94 products to market. And I personally co-founded 5 companies from start to exit.
Okay. Walk me through like that story. So 5 companies. Maybe you could walk me through what was your experience in the first company? And then what did you learn in between? Like in animation, there's the concept of a keyframe. When you hear the term like 24 frames per second, it means that there is a keyframe, which is number 1, and then another frame, number 24. And then in between is all the little like connective tissue between those movements in animation. Let's pretend like company 1 is the first keyframe, company 5 is the last keyframe. And what happened in between those 2 companies? What was your first experience starting a company to exit to the 5th one? Like what changed in like how you view the world, how you operate between that journey?
That's a really great way to frame that question. So my first company was an online travel company. So think like before the year 2000, the way you would order travel services to go down to the local travel agent, a brick and mortar store, sit in a chair at a desk, and they would put all your travel together, and they'd give you tickets. They'd get the tickets printed and hand you the tickets. And so behind that desk, they were clacking on a green screen to arrange your airfare, book your hotel, all of that. And I was part of the process of bringing that to an online e-commerce experience. So just after Travelocity and Expedia started, we started a company called One Travel. The unique thing about One Travel is that the founder wanted to do everything hyper local, and this place happened to be located in the middle of West Texas. So we built a data center in the middle of West Texas. And
what year is this, by the way?
Yeah. That's 2001. That's 2001. Okay. So 2001, we are racking and stacking hardware. We're configuring white box servers. We have 250 white box servers in a room with good AC, and we're building our own data center. And then the next keyframe is, I'll go halfway. I'll give you two keyframes and I'll keep it concise. Mm-hmm. Then I'm in an online media company in 2013, and we can't buy hardware fast enough for the amount of data we're collecting. So the big difference between the first keyframe and the second is the cloud. In 2013, I'm an early AWS adopter. I'm able to go get compute from AWS to run a big data platform to analyze ad traffic. And all I had to do is go learn about distributed data processing, fire up some hardware on the cloud. And so, yeah, the cloud was a huge change between trying to figure out how the internet works and how to build software for the internet quickly. And nothing was quick back then. You're doing everything. You're racking and stacking hardware. You're learning about network. You have to know a little bit about everything in 2000. But then by the 2010s, you're starting to get cloud services that are doing a lot of that for you. And then in 2015, I started a company that automated the entire LLC formation process, like going online to a Secretary of State and starting a company. And I ended up selling that business to LegalZoom in 2018. So those are a couple of key frames for you. And really the advancement in the cloud was significant. I didn't have to go to the board or investors and ask for $100,000 worth of hardware. I could just say, hey, let's get started. I don't need that much upfront investment. And that was a significant shift between what we had to do in the early 2000s to create infrastructure.
So between, okay, that sounds about like 15-year gap where 2001, you're racking and stacking hardware. And then about 15 years later, cloud got good enough where that wasn't a viable business strategy to just have your own hardware. Like it didn't make sense from a cost perspective, like to not use AWS. Like that's their famous case study at Netflix. They were racking and stacking their own hardware. And then eventually they just did the business case and even had to let go of like their engineers managing the hardware. Would it be a fair assumption to say that a lot of engineers built their whole career around racking and stacking hardware?
Yeah, one of my good buddies that I still talk to, I talked to him yesterday. So he's been a friend of mine for 25 years. He was the gentleman. I was responsible for all the software at One Travel. He was responsible for all the hardware. About 10 years ago, he and I started talking about DevOps, or writing code that represents infrastructure in the cloud. So he had to transition from an old school system administrator to a senior DevOps engineer. So he went through a bit of a career shift where instead of the old school system administrator having hands-on hardware, managing drives to make sure there was enough storage, just a whole myriad of hands-on things, it turned into a coding problem. I need the infrastructure to have this design. I'm going to code what the infrastructure looks like. I'm going to run my scripts and it's going to create, destroy, deploy this infrastructure. And so he made that shift and he did quite well for himself, shifting because now that he has all that contextual knowledge about system administration, the DevOps stuff is almost easier for him. He knows why. And then he can consult his company that he works for in the right ways of managing infrastructure. Like he has both the context and this new skill of representing infrastructure as code. So that was the shift he made, and people who didn't make that shift had a rougher time of it.
Yeah, like the reason I asked that question is because I'm having this like whole hypothesis. Actually, it's more of a thesis. Like it's my point of view now that nobody should be surprised that certain tasks or the value of technical knowledge in a certain domain is going down because of like AI isn't the first disruptive technological shift ever.
Yeah.
I think about podcasting. So I've been doing this for 8 years. When I first started podcasting, I was still using Pro Tools. I was listening for ums and uhs in like waveform format. It took forever to produce a podcast. It was so expensive. And then within 8 years, like the barrier to entry is so low that it's like hard not to have a podcast. But then where you spend more time is producing, getting guests, getting better interview skills, because the post-production is getting a lot cheaper because technology, especially with AI, has made it better. And I could just be like, oh, but I love the craft of mixing and stuff. It's no, I'm glad that's gone. Now I can spend more time on what actually makes the content valuable.
Yeah. So the way I've been riffing on this is because I completely agree with you. But the way I've been riffing on it is a year ago, we were digital ditch diggers. The metaphor I'm using is, think of the Ford assembly plant of a Model A, Model T car. You had a guy that showed up to work every day and I'm the tire man. I put the tires on the car. That's what I do. And so every bolt was hand wrenched, every part was put in with maybe a crane arm that had to be manually managed, all this. But a lot of manual labor, human labor was going in, and it was probably quite unsafe. And this is what we've been doing in technology and in the digital space for quite some time. We just didn't really know any better. And what we're doing now is it's more like the Tesla or the Toyota. We upgraded a little bit to where the plant has certain stages. We have a defined process. We might even have some robotic arms that are RC controlled, like remote controlled, so it's a lot safer. AI has given us some industrialization or some robotic processing sitting over the top. And then what's really happened over the last couple of months is now you can have these robots working autonomously based off proper instructions. So I think even over the past weeks with OpenClaw and multiple agent orchestration, we're even getting where this robot knows exactly how to do this set of work. And we're fine delegating that to that agent. And that's what that agent does. And so I think that's very exciting, but that's the idea of managing and orchestrating multiple agents. And so like, why should a CEO care about that? A CEO coming into to a business now gets to decide whether they want to go license Salesforce for their organization or whether they want to hire engineers to do something bespoke for their business, right? They get to decide they get to really decide what is core value to the customer. And now the barrier of, I don't have to go hire a big team of engineers and manually assemble this and take lots of risks that people are going to lose their fingers. I get to say, look, I want something completely different, and I think it's worth it to my business and my industry. And then they just have to describe that vision in words, have some design to give them clarity. They just need to participate in in the clarification process, and they will get something out that's useful to them.
Yeah. Before, I don't know, 18 months, 2 months ago, when Sonnet came out, Claude Sonnet, that was like the moment where I'm like, this is good enough. Like, where you can delegate. AI has gotten good enough where you can delegate to it. Like, we're beyond just like proofreading emails. Before that moment, I have podcast episodes where any non-differentiating piece of functionality, it's a buy, like the default is a buy decision, because it's like there's no point in making your own CRM unless you like go to Salesforce, right? To your point. But now, what is Salesforce? It's just like an opportunity record with some metadata on it.
Right.
And it looks at a report, and it's not cheap either. The licensing's expensive, and then you have to have an admin and like a real human agent to manage the Salesforce instance to make sure that the reports work. And now it's not like a crazy idea to be like, you know what? Let's just make our own CRM. Like the cost of development of any like horizontal related software domain, it makes a lot of sense. And you could see it right now. Like, I read this article about, we should be worrying about people like vibe coding competitors, like one-to-one competitors. You should be worrying about incumbents just going after their partner's business. So for example, like, why would Atlassian buy the browser company? Like, what, the wiki company?
Yeah.
That, like, knowledge management, Jira, they bought a browser. But you're like, oh, actually, you could actually manage like these vertical SaaS offerings and go broader as a business now, because it's cheaper to manage a browser. Like, before AI was good, it didn't make sense to buy a browser.
There's a couple of things there. The browser, everybody's buying browsers. A lot of companies come out buying browsers. And I think the story, or what I'm intuiting here, and so we know that Stack Overflow is getting far less traffic than it used to. So the revenue model for content creation is reducing because people are going to AI for the answers. So AI in a way has hijacked or stolen a bunch of content, made it its own, put it into a question and answer format. And I'm being a little trite, but that is a race to zero, because now if nobody goes in and continues to inform the internet about these things, if you have no Stack Overflow, then where are all your bad code answers going to come from? So part of that will be that there'll have to be a new licensing model for the content, like the ad publisher model. I spent 8 years in online advertising, and you could have a blog or a discussion board or something where a lot of discussion and content. AI loves that, but now it's hard to get people to it. And so something's going to have to shift there. I don't want to pretend to be a prophet in this area, but something is really going to shift there, because if all of a sudden Stack Overflow, just as one example, is back to their early stage 1 month of traffic, then the incentive to put information online is going to reduce. And so where is that information going to come from? And then how are we going to give permission to the information we share on the internet to the AI and say, so the fact that they're buying browsers, Perplexity has Comment, Jira bought one, they're all going to look at a different way of browsing the internet. And then you're going to be able to give them permissions to see your content or not.
Yeah, I think that's a really great read. It's like what you can do as a business has completely changed how you deploy engineering resources. You have a lot more optionality as a CEO now, where it's not as risky as a bet to go after like technology verticals that might not like make sense in the meantime, right? Like I saw that Airbnb is essentially creating like their own Perplexity style interaction model answer engine for their search bar, where now you can, instead of going to Perplexity to plan your trip or look up things for like, from when I go to, when I have a trip to Tokyo coming up, and I have a little like Perplexity space where it's my Tokyo trip like space to give it context plan and be ready like while I'm there to like ask questions to it. Like Airbnb is going to be like in trip context gathering, right? And it's Airbnb having that robust of a search experience to like go search and help you get that stuff. Like that wouldn't have made sense 2 years ago, but now it's, oh, I'm going to make an Airbnb flavor of an answer engine for just Airbnb customers. Right. That's something that's possible.
Yeah. So I have the theory on this is that as a brand or as a product, I have to have multiple interfaces on the top of my stack. So I think of the stack in terms of like high need at the bottom end of the stack and high value at the top of the stack. So this continuum of high value, what makes me different in the marketplace, and then high need is nobody's going to go out and build their own storage and compute, right? That's a high need item. I need compute resources. I need a place to store data. I'm going to go to the best partner I can find for that. I'm going to go to AWS, Azure, or GCP. But as I move up higher in the stack, I have my differentiated interfaces, how I expose myself to the customer. And so traditionally, we've had our web portals, we've had our B2B tools, our APIs, and then we've had our mobile app, right? Those are in the old way, like in the past, those have been the three things that we need, the customer experiences that we need. Now there's a new customer experience, and I call it the voice, right? I call it voice, chatbot, whatever. It's the agent experience for my brand. And then through building that agent experience, I'm voice enabling my underlying capabilities. So no different than I exposed my underlying capabilities on the go in a mobile app. Now I'm going to have to express my underlying capabilities in a voice agent. And so people are going to want to talk to me as talk to the product. They're going to want to take actions with the product. Like it's a new interface that's going to be more and more required as we move forward. And in doing that, we also get to define our MCP, our agent to agent communication. So somebody could be sitting in Perplexity and say, oh, I want to book a Airbnb in this location on this trip. And if I've exposed my agent, then I can accept that transaction through an agent to agent communication. So this is what's happening is people are having to define that persona, that agent experience that they want people to have with their product. And that what you're talking about with Airbnb doing that in their chat is just the beginning of that. So let's do it as a chatbot first. Let's see how people like that, what they want to do. But I guarantee you in 6 months, it'll be the Airbnb persona that you'll be talking to as if they were a human.
Yeah, like you instead of writing message to your host, you could have the Airbnb persona like message the host on your behalf. And so like before we recorded this episode and we're just talking about getting ready to hit record, that sounds like there's a ton of opportunity, tons of things to build like on top of the new tech stack. And I'm going to pull from your story about your friend who had to reinvent himself from his career. But the insight from that story was, it actually becoming more of a DevOps, like cloud specialist, reinventing into that because of his background doing it the hard way, stacking and racking hardware. It made him a better DevOps person because he had the taste, the context knowledge to better delegate to AWS through programming and scripts. And you mentioned that this is the most exciting time to be an engineer. And I'll frame my question this way. I just spoke with Mustafa Kapadia on my podcast, which his whole thing is teaching CPOs and product people what are the top 1% product managers, what are they doing to reinvent themselves for AI? What would you say is like, why should engineers who are willing and ready to reinvent themselves, why should they not be afraid? And what are the best engineers doing like to be ready for the new realities of engineering work? Like how is talent getting evaluated at your company? Why should CEOs how should CEOs view like engineering talent, right? Because some are just like, we could just build a tech company without engineers. Wrong assumption.
Yeah.
Like why?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And it's what I'm really spending most of my time on. What it affords you is an abstraction over the process, right? So before the AI revolution here, my whole business is based on hiring software engineers. Our model has been to mix the best parts of staff augmentation with outcome-driven project working, mush them together in what I call the outcome-focused teams, or think of us like your SEAL Team 6 for digital product delivery. And so on one hand, I could be like, oh, shoot, like I was selling people and now people are less required. My business is in trouble. But I don't look at it like that. What I look at it like is now our job is to build the agentic software factory and to operate the agentic software factory. And so that's what we're doing and in our model, the cost savings of that is passed on back to the customer. And so instead of spending our time meticulously editing syntax, or if you're a designer, like pushing pixels in high fidelity wireframes, you're abstracting that out just a little bit. You're starting to delegate significant amounts of work to agents. And then your job is to interrogate the agents. If I'm running a team and there's not good communication between the team members and there's not a good flow of information in to get good output out, then I will get a bad result. And the agentic software factory is no different. So I have a project running right now where I have a front-end agent, and his job is that, or I don't want to gender these robots because they're like genderless, but I make this mistake of gendering them. But I have a front-end agent, and their job is to make sure that the design pattern that they've gotten from the design agent is represented in the front-end code. And so that's their job. They're supposed to take that. So then where is my source of truth in design? Is it coming from some Figma make artifacts that have gotten approved by the vendor, or am I hoping for some happy accidents? And then I have a backend agent whose responsibility is to create the backend API and data access capabilities. I have a DevOps agent making sure that everything can be properly deployed and we're representing the infrastructure as code. I still have to supply these agents with information, and I still have to make sure that they're all doing their job correctly. But the power of this now is governance is now my responsibility, not my client's responsibility. I now have what that's allowed my engineers to do is, instead of worrying about meticulous syntax and wanting to take perfect orders in the form of user stories, and they're able to elevate themselves to really oversee a software development process and make sure. So now there's no corners being cut. We have tests for every piece of code. We're really thinking about it as engineers. And so I do believe like web development is dead. Web development can be easily delegated to an AI, but software engineering is now more important than ever. So that is where my excitement comes from, is because now we get to actually be engineers and nobody's losing fingers in the manufacturing process because they missed a semicolon or didn't put a single quote in the right place.
What do you mean by actually become engineers?
So oftentimes when you're working with maybe a company that's 10 million to 100 million in revenue, they are like, we need product, or we need the software product to be built. And in that kind of pressure, things like test-driven development are optional. So the idea of writing a test for every line of code, so you go calculate a discount, you should have corresponding code that tests that discount logic is operating properly. And I think this is the distinction between web developers and software engineers. A software engineer won't see that as optional, but many businesses have had teams operating without writing tests for their own code. So people are manually testing, customers are finding mistakes, and it's not properly engineered. And it was because of a time and budget calculation, or maybe a fallacy that, if we take the time to write those tests, it's going to delay the outcome of the project. But no different than in manual labor and physical labor, you're looking, how can I save some of this physical labor? And do I really need to dig the ditch a full 12 inches, or can I get away with 10 because that's 100 more hours of work? Now that the time has reduced, we can really look at what is properly engineered software, and we don't have to have that odd corner cutting reality in our software delivery.
Yeah, like I see when I'm describing people on the engineering team at any company I work at, I'm like, oh, that person is an engineer, that person's a dev. Because it's like their HR title might be an engineer, but they're not an engineer, because I'm like, no, they're a dev, because engineers solve problems. It's a creative role. Like, your job as an engineer is to make reliable, deployable, scalable software stacks. And a good engineer will always test their work. It's just like the cost of making that scalable software has still been historically very expensive, because it's the time required to make something that's reliable. It's crazy how many companies I worked at where like the infrastructure is underinvested because it delays commercial commitments. And you could say that, I would say shelter. Think about like the safety of shelter, right? Like human history, like houses were not safe for a very long time, because to make them safe, you have to dig a good foundation. That takes a lot of labor. And I can imagine the invention of the excavator, like, aligns with the rising safety and reliability of housing being built, or like skyscrapers, right? Like, you need to have like excavators, dredgers to make skyscrapers, go build a strong enough foundation. You needed like industrial equipment to make skyscrapers, right? And then that led to like housing costs going down in New York, because you could just build up and increase the housing supply by building upwards. like Claude feels like or any smart coding agent model feels like an excavator.
Yeah, if you use the ditch digging metaphor, then yeah, we're getting power tools. We're getting the excavator, we're getting the ditch digger. We're getting those power tools into the process now. Why if you were in construction, why would you not be happy about that? Because then all you have to do is invest in the power tools and you can do more with less. And and so it is a bit of a battle royale right now. Like, people have put lasers on the battlefield, and if you don't go pick up a laser, you're in trouble, right? So sometimes it will feel a little bit like a battle royale. Like, it is a kind of a keep up or die kind of situation right now. That's not untrue. But if you're willing to embrace that, then it's now achievable for you to play with it's peace through superior firepower. And so if you go get that, or talk to firms like ours and say, hey, how could we improve our software development process? There's still work that needs to be done. It's just moving the work to what we're good at as humans, which is solving those problems and being creative and really figuring out like what our industry and what our users uniquely need, and then figuring out how to get that information through a software delivery process that doesn't create a bunch of technical debt, but solves it once and for all. And so that's really what I'm spending all my time on. I think you have two worlds forming right now. A lot of the early AI business success has really been, I've seen a couple of businesses formed within the last year, 6 months, and they go solve like a very specific business problem, like a customer support problem. And so they've vibe coded a solution for customer one, and customer one is very happy and starts paying them for that. Customer two comes along. What they do is they just copy that solution and then vibe it into the uniqueness for the next client. And then so what they're doing is they're really delivering a service, but they're advertising it as a product because they've been able to vibe code up a product that delivers that specific service. And that model will work to a point. Like, they could go all the way out. They could have hundreds of those bespoke solutions that have some similarity, but not much. And they could probably go, and then the investment market will look at that and go, wow, that's a really sexy product you have. You're earning all this revenue. We're going to give you a great multiple. You're using AI, and value them, and then value them high, maybe even buy them at a high price, only to realize that this is actually, in reality, not a product. It's just a bunch of point in time vibe coded solutions duplicated over. And then the management of this is going to be massive.
Yeah, it's like they're doing more of the same, like the custom software shops are doing more of the same thing. They're like, oh, cool, we could just sell more units of custom software, and like doing the same thing, just
Yeah, it's the
cheaper.
instance model, right?
Yeah.
It's just an instance model. Okay, I'll give you an instance of this, and then we'll just vibe code it up. And then other people are saying like, no, we do want a properly engineered solution. We want to create a product. We want to take in customer feedback and improve and modify the product as we go. And that's what we're helping with. So we're more than happy for people to go vibe code a solution that works for customer one. But at some point, that model cannot be duplicated and it won't scale. And so we want to help people still use AI to do the engineering, but figure out where the points of scale are and make sure that they're really building a blue chip company, not a kind of a build and flip.
Yeah, I love that, because when I really started diving into integrating AI into like my workflow as a PM before I switched back to design. So I started as design, went to PM because the cost of being strategic was you can't be doing the work of design at the same time. It's like too much work. And my mind has changed pretty significantly. Like, I used to think, like, I did the hybrid PM designer before AI got good. And I'm like, I'm never doing that again. That was so hard. I could confidently say I could do both easily now, because I'm orchestrating like my chief of staff agent that helps give updates to the right stakeholders in the right format. And I'm using my basically junior designer agent to help create concepts, like exponential concept generation of like different approaches to UI patterns that I had to do by hand before. And then now I'm more like an editor in chief. I'm like doing editorial decisions and making sure that, okay, is this on brand? Is this using the right pattern for this use case? Like I'm planning more, because I've noticed that if I just was like, oh no, I'm just going to be a PM and I'm going to go super horizontal, I've realized that like the trade-off is now I either could be a really strategic PM, but then that at the sacrifice of not being able to help drive ACs at a tactical level anymore, because it's hard to jump between the horizontal slices of the job now. And so now it's, as a designer, I'm doing more of like the delivery management of my designs. Like I craft my own ACs for my designs now. And then my PM, with the freed up time, can be more strategic, do more financial modeling, actually like make our plans more resilient and not have to like context switch between what we need next sprint, what we like, how do we think far enough ahead? And what I'm hearing is that some people take AI and they just apply the same model. They just go very horizontal on the custom software business model. But what it sounds like you guys are doing is, but now it's like hard to actually manage all those instances of software because you've dug your hole you dug the hole faster, and now you're like in the deep hole of all these unmaintainable code bases that now you have to be like, no, we're actually going to have to like plan more and like optimize for richness of quality over quantity of instances, because like AI will actually make it worse to do it the old way.
That's right. That's right. And it is, you'll hear about the instance model companies be valued at tens of millions of dollars. And you will hear about that. That's happening. Companies are getting acquired for 50 to 100 million because they've gone, and rather than taking the time to build a proper SaaS company, they've built an AI software solution that is just duplicated client to client. And it's hard to, with that kind of value and those kind of numbers behind it, it's hard to say that they did it wrong because it's successful. So how do you say that? We justify ourselves by our results. But at some point that will shoot sparks, and or create a new, you're just pushing the labor force from a engineering labor force to what's more like an AI engineering labor force. And that'll be interesting for those business owners to sort with. What we're really doing is we're saying, hey, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, and let's still figure out how to build fast and effectively, but still properly engineer those solutions. So build in tenancy and customer data separation from the beginning, but still use all these tools to design and figure out like that differentiation in the user experience. And that's why that's why I think I'm articulating. I see engineers do this all the time. This will give you another point of view. They want to go straight to the AI persona first, because that's the thing that nobody in their industry has. But you can't go to the AI persona if you're not storing data, if you don't have business logic, if you don't have storage and compute. Like if you don't have all the high need things, if you haven't actually built a product, then those are all precursors for being able to create that AI persona. There's no magic bullet to say, oh, I just want that AI persona. That thing needs to live on top, just like your mobile app needed to live on top of a platform, of a product. So that's what we're seeing, is that they don't want to go to the end to have that new voice persona, and there's still engineering that has to take place.
Yeah. And it's the go slow, like slowest. Well, it's that actually talking about like Navy SEALs. And I think I want to tie up the conversation about this item is like a famous saying in the SEAL teams is slow is smooth is fast. And I chose, as I was reinventing my workflow, to be more AI focused, is I did a lot more planning and like spending time delegating and creating my agents. and I'm like building out my infrastructure of like how I process and like refine ideas. And I spend a lot more time in like pre-production, if you want to use the movie metaphor. And yeah, it resulted in me like not for a period of time, like not delivering specs, design specs. But like when I got the thinking down, I got the concept and the strategy down, like I was writing more, I was reading more. Then it's like a matter of a day executing the agents to be like, this is exactly what like the direction we're going to go. And then the concept generation is like really fast. The specification creation is like within the same day. But you, instead of spending 2 weeks like building out like a crappy V1, you spend the first 2 days of a 2 week process getting to the crappy V20, taking a week to refine your thinking about it, writing, rocking the problem, and then spend the last day of those 2 weeks like finishing the work. It's been so fun working that way because I could really think through this, really like sweat every little detail conceptually and get something done. Now, that leads into like my last kind of like thread is you said like you guys are like your SEAL Team 6. Let's like go heavy on the metaphor here because I've talked about it a lot with people. And what's the difference between an operator in SEAL Team 6 and a conventional soldier?
Yeah, no, so I love that question. So the conventional soldier, they understand the minimum standard. And I've run this over, I'm the only non-veteran in my family for generations. And so I've asked this question many times. My CEO coach is a former Green Beret. And the idea in the regular Army is when I go to a PT test, I understand the minimum standard. I understand I need to be able to do 100 push-ups in a certain amount of time. I need to be able to run a mile in a certain time. I understand the minimum standard. The special operator understands what is maximally possible. So they understand how far and how hard they can go physically until the wheels come off, and they understand the maximum possibility of their physical limits. And so when they look at a mission, they go, okay, wait a minute, this is outside the realm of what my physical machine, my body can do, not my mind, but my physical machine. And so then they will tailor the mission to make it more conducive for what's maximally possible, not, hey, let me clarify the minimum standard. Like what makes this task done? Not just what makes this task done, but the special operator says, no, what are the maximum possibilities here?
And I think the outcome.
Yes. What is the outcome? And so I've modeled my culture, even our core values are the acronym ELITE, empowering leadership, innovation, teamwork with excellence. Because I want my engineers to think about our job is to help the client understand what's maximally possible, not ask them, okay, what is your minimum standard? And so that's the cultural shift, to take global professionals and turn them into elite professionals. And what everything we've talking about allows them to do is not so much work on the business, but on the project, on the outcome, but not just work in it, but work on it as well, to think about the strategy of delivery and fully own their practice. So the good thing is that our delivery model is a cross-functional delivery model. So we sell a DevOps role, a designer role, a front-end engineer, a back-end engineer, a data engineer. We sell these roles. And now each of these roles have started to design and develop and perfect their own agents. So now the thing that we sell, these different roles, is the same, but now these physical bodies are propelled with some digital machinery. And so now we just put the outcome through this delivery process. And these professionals are now thinking about, okay, wait, what does excellence look like? How are we going to help this client not just have a product, but hit their outcome, hit their go-to-market strategy, or and they're all asking questions about that.
Yeah, the last engineering team I worked out with did feel like these operators. Like I described, like a SEAL Team 6 soldier is defined as an operator, And a soldier is more of, the difference is like one's an operator, one isn't. And what an operator is that there's a really good talk on like how to operate for YC. And there's this metaphor used of hired cannons. Like you should hire people that know, like point people in the right direction. You don't want to hire a bunch of ammo because then you're just blowing up everything, right? An employee is either ammo or a cannon, and you want to try to like hire and retain cannons where they could focus effort and get work done through other people or agents in this case. And like, they know where to point things. And what SEAL Team 6, it's like they plan their missions. They have to present their plan. They are more surgical, and they're not they don't see their value as like number of missions, even though they do a lot. They're measured by the outcomes of like their success and their ability to cross-train. Each team member could do the other person's job. Everyone's able to fill in a redundancy. Let's say if the sniper is like wounded and can't operate, someone could take the rifle and use a sniper rifle and do a pretty good job and still complete the mission, right? There's redundancies in there. And a conventional soldier, like everything falls apart if there's no leadership on that team, right? Everyone's a leader. Everyone's a cross-trained professional. They know that they're capable of doing a good job in multiple domains. And that's like really like the capital E engineering to me, is that your company, you're hiring a bunch of cannons, and like client just provides the ammunition, but you're actually you're a partner, like a trusted advisor. Like the difference between hiring you is, okay, you're hiring operators, and then hiring like a normal development team is like hiring mercenaries. Like that's literally the definition of a mercenary is, they could fight and for money. They'll do it.
I think
But
militia. You're getting militia.
Yeah.
To the CTO or CEO, the conversation that I'm having is that they're getting hit with all kinds of outcomes. External factors are changing in their business, or internal factors are changing in their business, and they're getting hit with all these outcomes. So they have a choice. They can either push that outcome, be convinced by the business that this outcome is of some level of importance and urgency that it needs action, and they can go push yet another outcome on their already divided staff and then see what that result is, right? Okay, I've already given them 5 outcomes that are already planned and committed for the year. So I'm now going to go push another one. And so then the pie fractures another slice, right? So you go from 20% capacity to 15 because you've pushed yet another outcome on your already deployed team. Or you can come to Particle 41 and we will report the optics of the mission back to you the same way you would expect it to the directors. But our people are going to work alongside, they're going to influence, they're going to affect change towards that mission. So you get this mission aligned team that's cross-functional enough to go create the outcome within your existing organization. And we've done that 94 times. We have a really good track record of being able to work shoulder to shoulder with your existing team, but only outcome in a way your internal team can't, because they have so much other stuff that you've already asked them to do. And I think it's just a great decision that folks need to make, whether or not to continue to insource and divide the crew, or look at the right logic for outsourcing, but then hold your outsource partner accountable. Okay, give them a little bit of autonomy to go tackle this thing and expect excellence from your outsource partner to go do that, but then invite them in. Don't keep them on the outside. Invite them in and say, hey, if you can shake up the status quo a little bit while you're in here. We worked with many companies where the internal team just wasn't really focused on the process because that's not their job. Their job was to do their role. And we're able to come in and say, hey, if we optimize the process in this way, this is what we see consistently working client after client. This is where we see we can push the needle. Sometimes it's about little things, that making little tweaks equals high levels of enhanced productivity. And then most internal teams are focused on one process. We're running 25 active engagements. So we get this kind of this opinion that's formed over larger scale. And yeah, it's usually a really happy, just like a really cool comparing of notes when we bring our, what I'll call industrialized process to a team that's maybe been running together for a while over a more legacy architecture, and how we influence that to higher levels of productivity and results.
I love that. Ben, is there anything that you feel like hasn't been said that should be said before we sign off?
No, nothing comes up for me. I think this is a great conversation. I appreciate the coffee talk nature of it, the vibe here.
Yeah. I'm always happy to be like, no, I think we covered a lot of stuff. It's okay, great. It's feedback to me of we were very comprehensive with the time we have. And how can people find your work? How can people find
So
how do you
I'm very
prefer people
easy to
reach out you?
connect with, but I am also blessed. I'm also blessed with a very common name. So my LinkedIn is Benjamin R. Johnson, all spelled out one word. It's probably easier to find me through particle41.com. But whether you go to my LinkedIn or you go to my domain, I have a connect with me link on both my LinkedIn and my website that is my Calendly. So you can book a 30-minute meeting with me just by going to Particle 41 or hitting me up on LinkedIn. And I love talking to people about how to move their business forward through technology. So yeah, hit me up and feel free to book some time with me, and let's just chat about what your challenges are.
Great. Ben, thank you so much for coming on the show. You have a good one.
Yeah, thanks.
Hey listener, thanks again for listening to The Way of Product. As we power down today's session on the fusion of creativity and technology, let's solidify the energy you've gotten from our dialogue today. If you've gleaned insights or strategies that could turbocharge your projects, I have a small but powerful ask. Swing by the platform where you're hearing this and leave a review. Think of it as your digital high five to us. It's a fuel that propels this content to more creative technologists like you, amplifying the impact of the shared knowledge. So until our next interview, keep pioneering and pushing the envelope. Thanks again for lending your ears and your imagination to our community. Catch you on the next download.